So we know that one of the most important things in teaching vocabulary is choosing the right words, okay? Just choosing many words shouldn't be the goal. Robust and explicit vocabulary instruction can make a significant difference, and that is our focus for all 4 vocabulary booster sessions, okay? As Maria pointed out, the first book that we will mention is Explicit Instruction by Anita Archer. Many of you are familiar with that book already. Bringing Words to Life by Isabel Beck. Many of you are familiar with this book. I will reference Enemy Pie, but I will show you many quotes from those first 2 books that I've mentioned, okay? On page 28 of, and I know you don't have the books with you, but I would like to just mention that on page 28 of Bringing Words to Life is the information that is most crucial for these 4 booster sessions. But we have done something for you. We have created a tool that you will love to use that will make your life so much easier as you go through these sessions and as your teachers go away and plan for vocabulary instruction that is explicit and robust. I'm going to show you under the document camera, and if you would, go ahead and pull out your bookmark. Let me give that a moment to focus. Choosing words to teach, and I call this side 1. It says criteria for selecting tier 2 words, okay? These are our 3 criteria. Number 1, importance and utility, and I'm going to get much more into that in just a moment, so hang tight. Number 2, instructional potential. Number 3, conceptual understanding. So in other words, I'm going to be very explicit here. These 3 points are what you are going to look for when you are identifying tier 2 words. We get many questions about that when we go out to campuses. Now tell me again how I identify tier 2 words. This is a great tool, and it gets even better. Stick with me. So step 1, we'll come back to in a moment. Go ahead and flip over on the back. And it says, once again, criteria for selecting tier 2 words. Remember, step 1 was importance and utility? Well, here's sort of a checkpoint for you. Words that are used often in written text and appear across a variety of domains. And I love this part. Look at this. Here's I call this my test question. If I'm looking for tier 2 words, is this a word that students will see in a variety of texts? And usually I go right to that question. The second one, instructional potential. Words that are multidimensional and therefore can be used in a variety of ways to connect to other words and concepts. Here's your test question when identifying tier 2 words. Is this a word that can help students express themselves? Now, I'm just going to say, expressing yourself, that's sort of an ethereal concept, isn't it? That could mean many different things. Don't overthink it. That's my advice to you. Express yourself. I love it when my son uses a word that's a little more than mad. If he says, "I'm mad," I'm like, well, okay. You know, he's 7, he's about to be 8, and I'm watching his vocabulary grow. So in order to express himself, I loved it the other day when he was really mad, but he didn't say he was mad. He came to me and said, "I am furious with you." And then the other day, he really dropped a bomb on me. He threw out the word agitated. I love that. So he is using these words to express himself, and he's no longer just saying mad, okay? I deviated from the script. I promise you that's not in your script. But I'm just trying to paint the picture for you as I go through this valuable tool, the bookmark. Now we get to conceptual understanding. So this is step 3. Words that provide greater precision in describing a concept. Now, here's your test question for that. Is this a word that will allow students to more specifically describe a concept? Okay? But then, We get more specific to the text that you're teaching at the time with this part. Words that are important to the conceptual understanding of the, and I even underlined it, selected text. So my test question here would be, is this a word that is critical to the comprehending of this selected text? Okay? So again, we will come back to the bookmark, especially all through session 1, and I will go through my rationale using the bookmark when we talk about selecting Tier 2 words. Okay? So with that, I'm going to move directly into the I do portion of this session. Okay? So I will start by modeling how I will use this bookmark to identify those Tier 2 words. So for this activity, you will need to go ahead and have your bookmark out. You will need a highlighter. You all have highlighters inside your pencil pouches there. And you will also need a copy of this very uplifting article called Not Grass-Fed, but at least Pain-Free. And I'm going to tell you, this is some light reading for a Tuesday morning. Just get ready. All right? So again, let me repeat. You will need a highlighter, you will need your bookmark, and you will need this New York Times article. Now, as Maria pointed out before, you're going to see me wearing many hats today, but I'm going to start out as a 9th grade teacher, and I'm going to use this article to teach for a nonfiction genre study. Okay? Any 9th grade teachers? 9th grade teacher supporters here today? 9th grade teacher supporters? Yeah, I see a couple of hands there, yes. Okay, I'm wearing your hat for now. So again, I'm a 9th grade teacher. I'm preparing to read this article with my students as a part of my nonfiction genre study. And first, I'm just going to read the text. I'm not going to do anything but read it. So bear with me. I'm going to read it aloud for you. Feel free to follow along, but don't mark anything quite yet. More animals than ever suffer from injuries and stress on factory farms. Veal calves and gestating sows are so confined as to suffer painful bone and joint problems. The high-grain diets provided in feedlots cause severe gastric distress in many animals, and faulty or improperly used stun guns cause the painful deaths of thousands of cows and pigs a year. Because the amount of red meat that Americans eat per capita has held steady at more than 100 pounds a year as the population has increased, we are most likely stuck with factory farms. But it is still possible to reduce the animal's discomfort through neuroscience. Recent advances suggest it may soon be possible to genetically engineer livestock so that they suffer much less. Scientists have learned to genetically engineer animals so that they lack certain proteins that are important to the operation of the anterior cingulate cortex, a part of the brain that senses pain. Professor Minzuo and his colleagues at the University of Toronto, for example, have bred mice lacking enzymes that operate in effective pain pathways. When these mice encounter painful stimulus, they withdraw their paws normally, but they do not become hypersensitive to a subsequent painful stimulus as ordinary mice do. Given the similarity among all mammals' neural systems, it is likely that scientists could genetically engineer pigs and cows in the same way. Because the sensory dimension of animals' pain would be preserved, they would still be able to recognize and avoid, when possible, situations where they might be bruised or otherwise injured. If we cannot avoid factory farms altogether, the least we can do is eliminate the unpleasantness of pain in the animals that must live and die on them. It would be far better than doing nothing at all. Boy, aren't you uplifted? Didn't that feel good? My meat eaters in the room are like, give me a pork chop. I'm ready. That didn't do anything to me. The vegetarians, the vegans are a little disturbed by that, I understand. But this is reality. This might be something that I discuss with my 9th grade students. Okay? So, I am moving to step 1 of the I do process. Are you ready? I'm just going to talk through it with you, and I'm going to do this just as I would. And remember, Maria said it, all of this goes on before a student walks into your classroom. There's a lot to this, but it all happens before they walk in, during PLCs, okay? All right, let me grab my yellow highlighter. Now what I'm going to do, step one, go to my bookmark, and let's look at step one. Read it with me. Let's do a choral read. Step one, highlight words in the text that are likely to be unfamiliar to your students. Yes, that is step one, and let me tell you, this can be a wee bit controversial. You and your teammates may not 100% agree on what words your ninth grade students may not recognize. And I'm here to tell you, that is okay. And as we go through these today and you go, I don't know if I agree with you, Robert, it's okay. A lot of this is subjective. So this leads to discussions later on. Most of the words I think you'll agree on. You know your kids better than we do. So you're going to know this better than anybody else. So just keep that in mind as you plan. Okay, so I'm going through the article this time, and bear with me, I'm going to read through it again. And all I'm doing as I encounter a word that I think my ninth grade students may not be familiar with, I'm just going to highlight it. I may not do anything else with that word. But for now, for step one, if I think, I don't know if a ninth grader is going to know that, boop, I'm going to highlight it. Are we ready? Here we go. More animals than ever suffer from injuries and stress on factory farms. Veal calves, I would probably say some ninth graders may not know what that is. And gestating sows, I don't know if I want them to know that one. They might call each other that one. Are so confined, maybe not, as to suffer painful bone and joint problems. The high-grain diets provided in feedlots, I'm going to say probably not. Cause severe gastric distress, definitely not, in many animals. And faulty or improperly used stun guns can cause the painful deaths of thousands of cows and pigs a year. Okay, so far, those are the words that I think my ninth grade students may or may not know. Okay? Because the amount of red meat that Americans eat per capita has held steady at more than 100 pounds a year as the population has increased, we are most likely stuck with factory farms. But it is still possible to reduce the animals' discomfort through neuroscience. That might be a word that they don't know. Recent advances suggest it may be possible to genetically engineer, livestock so that they suffer much less. Scientists have learned to genetically engineer, I've already got that word here, I don't need to highlight it again, animals so that they lack certain proteins that are important to the operation of the anterior cingulate cortex. We all know that one, right? The part of the brain that senses pain. Professor Menswo and his colleagues at the University of Toronto, for example, have bred mice lacking enzymes that operate in effective pain pathways. When these mice encounter a painful stimulus, they withdraw their paws normally, but they do not become hypersensitive to a subsequent painful stimulus as ordinary mice do. So given the similarity among all mammals' neural systems, it is likely that scientists could genetically engineer pigs and cows in the same way. But the sensory dimension of the animal's pain could be preserved. They would still be able to recognize and avoid, when possible, situations where they might be bruised or otherwise injured if we cannot avoid factory farms altogether, the least we can do is eliminate the unpleasantness of pain of the animals that must live and die on them. It would be far better than doing nothing at all. So, those are the words that I selected that, they may not know these words, right? Did many of you agree with my choices or disagree? Raise your hand if you agreed with most of my choices, okay? That was most of you, but I had you raise your hand because it wasn't all of you. Some of you were like, I would have chosen something completely different because you're thinking ninth grade, you're thinking a specific grade level, or you're thinking, I never taught ninth grade, I've always been an elementary person, or I've always been a high school person, so I'm not quite sure, let me see where he's going with this, right? Well, that was step one of my I do. All I did was identify words that they may or may not know. Now, let's go to step two. I'm going to pull the bookmark out again, and I'm going to point to step two, and I would love for you to read step two with me. Circle the words that could be categorized as tier 2 words. Now, this is where we need to use this bookmark. This is our test. Flip the bookmark over. As I go through these words that I've highlighted, now I've eliminated all the other words in this article. I'm just looking at highlighted words, yes? So, I'm going to go through each one and consider the criteria listed on the back of my bookmark. Okay? So, let me just talk through a couple here. Well, my first highlighted word is veal calves. Now, is that a word, I'm just going to go straight to my test question. Is this a word that students will see in a variety of texts? No. Oh, we sounded unanimous on that. No, they all went no. Okay, so I think we can probably rule that one out. It's probably much more specific to this particular text. Okay? How about gestating sows? Maria, do not call me a gestating sow, okay? Please don't. Okay, probably we can rule that out because, again, it's not a word that they're going to see across a variety of texts, right? Okay, how about confined? Well, let's go through it. Is this a word that students will see in a variety of texts? I think absolutely. Is this a word that can help students express themselves? I would love for my 7-year-old to say, Daddy, when you put me in my room in timeout, I feel so confined. I would love that. Okay, let's look at conceptual understanding because this is where we kind of step into that ethereal gray area. Is this a word that will allow students to more specifically describe a concept? I think so. Instead of just saying locked up or held down, they're confined. Is this a word that is critical to comprehending this selected text? In this case, it is. Because in the entire article is about that they're having bone and joint problems from being confined. Okay? Let's do a couple more. Feedlots. Is this a word that students will see in a variety of texts? I would say probably not. So we can stop right there. Gastric distress. Distress, perhaps. I like that. I like that. I hadn't even considered that when I was preparing this training. Distress, perhaps. But in this particular case, they're using gastric distress. So that's really what we would focus on. Okay, how about faulty? Is this a word students will see in a variety of texts? Is this a word that can help students express themselves? Dad, you grounded me, and I believe that your reasoning was faulty. I would love to hear that. I wouldn't like the idea behind it, but the fact that he's using that to express himself is rich. Is this a word that will allow students to more specifically describe a concept? Absolutely. Okay, so for time's sake, I'm going to skip ahead here, and I'm going to circle in the whole article the words that I think could be identified as tier 2 words. And let me say this, In fact, look up at me for this part. Look up here. Look, 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 look. These are the words that I'm circling that are going to be put through the 6-step vocabulary routine. Okay? You've already highlighted. Now, you're going to circle words. And I'm telling you, you may not get through all those words. You might. I just heard Becky stand up here and say that the goal is how many words per week? 2 to 3, but ultimately we would like to get to 4 to 5. That's it. So, of the words that I circle, I have to make that decision. Which ones am I going to explicitly teach? And every time today you hear me say explicitly teach, I'm just talking about the 6-step vocabulary routine. Yes? All right, so for time's sake, I'm going to go through and I'm just going to circle the words that I think would probably be classified as tier 2 words. So I'm going to say confined. I'm going to say faulty. I'm going to say improperly. I'm going to say steady. I'm going to go on up here and circle stimulus, subsequent, and preserved. Now, those are the words I identified. There is some subjectivity involved here. You may not agree with my choices. I may not agree with your choices. Your teammates may or may not agree with you, but that's when you have those discussions. It's quite possible that you put a different word through the routine one week than your teaching partner does. I don't know. That's up to you all. That depends on your individual situation. But it would be nice if we could agree. Okay? All right. So that was step 2. Now, I'm going back to my bookmark. Now, we're still in the I do. I'm going back to my bookmark. I'm going to flip it over. I want you to do the same with me. I'm at step 2A. Read it with me. Decide which of the tier 2 words need thorough attention. And what do we mean by thorough attention? Which words will go through the 6-step routine? Exactly. That's all we're really doing here. So you might take those words and write them down to the side. You might write them on a sticky note of the words that are both highlighted and circled. If a word is highlighted, you're done with it for now. We'll talk about that in a minute. If it's highlighted and circled, those are the ones you're going to choose from to decide which ones to put through the routine. As far as marking the words at this point on step 2A, there's not anything specific you'll do other than note the words that you are going to explicitly teach. Okay? I am ready to move on to step 3. Let's just say that in this case, the 3 words that I'm going to teach, though, are confined, stimulus, and subsequent. Let's just say that that's what I chose. Okay? And Becky's happy with me because I'm doing 3 words, right? All right. Let's move on to step 3. Read it with me straight from the bookmark. Underline additional words other than the tier 2 words you selected in step 2A above, necessary for your students to understand the text. Decide how you will teach these words. Examples: pairing, parallel language, showing a picture. Add these notes to the text. Now, I'm just going to pull out my little cheat sheet here for time's sake. And this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to show you what I've already done. So let's go back to the first word that we highlighted, veal calves. I'm going to underline that word because obviously I don't think it's a tier 2 word, but do I think it's a word that I need for them to understand in order to comprehend this specific text? Remember, it's all about comprehension. That's our ultimate goal. Comprehension and deep ownership of these words. Okay? Veal calves. I would probably just pair that. So I'm going to come right there in the text and I'm going to pair it with baby cattle. because that's what it is, and they would understand. My 9th grade students would understand if I said baby cattle. If I said veal calves, probably not so much. But then, from that point on, they probably would understand. Gestating sows. I'm going to pair that with pregnant pigs. And those 9th graders will call each other both throughout the rest of the day. And then here's an example, feedlots. We discussed earlier, I asked you, is that a word that you're going to see across a variety of texts? And you all said no, and we totally agreed on that. But what I would do here, because this is a specific object, I think this is a great opportunity for me to show a picture of that. But it has to be a good one. And we'll talk about that more specifically in another session. Oh, what about this one? Anterior cingulate cortex. Well, if I read my text, it's right there. It's in the context. Anterior cingulate cortex, a part of the brain that senses pain. So I would direct them straight to the context description. Okay? Now remember, these are just a few examples. You would do this type of thing with every word that you highlight initially. Okay? We can't just read it, highlight, and acknowledge that, oh, they probably don't know these words, and then not ever acknowledge it again. Okay? Is this a time-consuming task? Absolutely it is. But are you getting lots of bang for your buck? You better believe it. All right, we have now completed the I do portion of this. So let's move on to the we do. Okay, I'm going to step away from the podium for this. We talked about Enemy Pie by Derek Munson. And I still see some of you working on my New York Times article, and that's great. But what I will tell you, you can put that away for now. Just put it away, because we're changing grade levels on you. We go into 2nd grade. 2nd grade for the we do. Where are my secondary people? Raise your hand. Hi, secondary people. You ready to go to 2nd grade? No? I hear that a lot. Okay, Enemy Pie by Derek Munson. Has anyone read this book? Oh, good, good. I'm going to talk about my son. I'm sorry, that's what we parents do. He came home the other day, and he had actually checked this book out from the library, not knowing that I ordered about, 50-something copies of it? And literally, he walks in the door from school, throws down his backpack, and he sees that FedEx has been there, and there's like a stack of books this tall in my entryway, and he goes, "Dad, you have lots of enemies." I know, you probably have to know the story in order to know that, but I'm going to read just the inside of the dust jacket for you to give you a quick synopsis, and then you get to be my 2nd graders. You get to be my 2nd graders, and I'm just going to read a part of the book for our We Do activity, okay? So it was the perfect summer. That is, until Jeremy Ross moved into the house down the street and became enemy number 1. Luckily, Dad has a surefire way to get rid of enemies. Enemy pie. But one of the secret ingredients is spending the entire day with your enemy. Ooh. Okay, now I'm going to read just the first 3 pages of this, and I don't want you to do anything except just sit there and listen and take it in, okay? I wish that I had time to read the entire book. I do not. Would you like me to try to show you pictures? Would that help? I think I can. Yeah, I think that'll work. You can at least see part of it. It should have been a perfect summer. My dad helped me build a treehouse in our backyard. My sister was at camp for 3 whole weeks, and I was on the best baseball team in town. It should have been a perfect summer, but it wasn't. It was all good until Jeremy Ross moved into the neighborhood, right next door to my best friend Stanley. Now, I did not like Jeremy Ross. He laughed at me when he struck me out in a baseball game. He had a party on his trampoline, and I wasn't even invited. But my best friend Stanley was. Jeremy Ross was the one and only person on my enemy list. I never even had an enemy list until he moved into the neighborhood. But as soon as he came along, I needed one. I hung it up in my treehouse where Jeremy Ross was not allowed to go. Dad understood stuff like enemies. He told me that when he was my age, he had enemies too. But he knew of a way to get rid of them. I asked him to tell me how. Tell you how? I'll show you how, he said. He pulled a really old recipe book off the kitchen shelf, and inside there was a worn-out scrap of paper with faded writing. Dad held it up and squinted at it. Enemy pie, he said, satisfied. Little tease there. Maybe we'll get to read this later. Okay, so basically that time I just simply wanted you to hear the first 3 pages of the book since we can't focus on the whole book, okay? So those first 3 pages are going to be used in our redo, which we're going into right now. So step 1, go ahead, get your bookmark, read step 1 with me. Step 1, highlight words in the text that are likely to be unfamiliar to your students. Now, when I first read that, I about had a panic attack. I said, I can't highlight in books. I can't do that. So that's why we've provided some sticky notes there. So get a sticky note and get something to write with, please. I'll give you just a moment to do that. I think I'm okay, right? Thank you, I like that. Okay, so I'm going to modify step 1. Instead of writing in the book, I'm just going to write the words down on a sticky note. So I'm going to read again, and I'm not going to put it up there. I'm just going to read sort of slowly. As I read, I would like for you to consider yourself a second grade teacher. You are teaching this realistic fiction genre. Okay, realistic fiction genre. Second grade, just do your best. Nobody's going to come and check your answers and test you. And what words do you think that I read out of these 3 pages that would second graders probably not know? Okay? It should have been a perfect summer. My dad helped me build a tree house in our backyard. My sister was at camp for 3 whole weeks, and I was on the best baseball team in town. It should have been a perfect summer, but it wasn't. It was all good until Jeremy Ross moved into the neighborhood, right next door to my best friend Stanley. I did not like Jeremy Ross. He laughed at me when he struck me out in a baseball game. He had a party on his trampoline, and I wasn't invited. But my best friend Stanley was. Jeremy Ross was the one and only person on my enemy list. I never even had an enemy until he moved into the neighborhood. But as soon as he came along, I needed one. I hung it up in my treehouse where Jeremy Ross was not allowed to go. Dad understood stuff like enemies. He told me that when he was my age, he had enemies too. But he knew of a way to get rid of them. I asked him to tell me how. Tell you how? I'll show you how, he said. He pulled out a really old recipe book off the kitchen shelf. Inside, there was a worn-out scrap of paper with faded writing. Dad held it up and squinted at it. Enemy pie, he said, satisfied. So, since you didn't have the book, I read that aloud. Obviously, it would be a little different if you have the book and you can actually write and look and go back and analyze the word again. Do I think they would know that? Maybe not. You can keep your bookmark handy. But hopefully you had time to jot down some words that you think might be unfamiliar to your students. Could I get some volunteers? Let me just have 2 or 3 volunteers to share out words that you wrote down that you felt like second grade students would not know. Just yell one out. Squinted. Faded. Satisfied. Good. One more? Hey, enemy. Let's not even get past the title of the book, right? That's right. Okay. So, unfortunately, we didn't have time to review the entire book, but the authors of Explicit Instruction, Anita Archer and Charles Hughes, I'm going to hold this up just so you know where I'm going with this. This is why we chose to use Enemy Pie. They've gone through and analyzed everything for us. So I'm going to show you. On the top of page 61, they have identified the words that they think that second grade students would be unfamiliar with, but they did the entire book, okay? We obviously didn't have time. The words were perfect, ingredients, trampoline, horrible, recipe, nervous, disgusting, invited, earthworms, relieved, and boomerang. That's the whole book, though, okay? And enemy is not on there, but I agree with you. I probably would have written down enemy. That was step 1 of the we do. So we've done step 1. Now we're going into step 2 of the we do. So go ahead, pull out your bookmark, point to step 2. Please, let's do a choral read. Step 2, circle the words that could be categorized as tier 2 words. Now, it's exactly the same. You've got your sticky note there. You wrote down some words. Go ahead, circle a few that you think have or meet these criteria. Importance and utility. Is this a word students will see in a variety of texts? Instructional potential. Is it a word that can help students express themselves? Conceptual understanding. Is this a word that will allow students to more specifically describe a concept? And is it a word that might be critical to comprehending this selected text? Okay? So could maybe a couple of people share a word that you circled and then share your rationale for selecting that word? I'm going to pick one.
Enemy.
Enemy, because?
Because I feel like they don't understand what a true enemy really is.
Okay, so based on that bookmark and those 3 criteria, you think that's a word they'll see across a variety of text, right? Okay. What's another word? Uh-huh. I like. Okay. Now let's look at step 2A. And remember, 2A, read it with me. Decide which of the tier 2 words will need thorough attention. And thorough attention means 6-step vocabulary routine. Now, really, there's nothing to mark here other than you're going to note those words. You're going to pull out those words that you've decided to put through the routine. Okay? So for our purposes here, let's just say that I'm going to use nervous, disgusting, and relieved. And that comes straight from the Explicit Instruction by Anita Archer and Charles Hughes. Let's just look at my rationale for these 2 words. How about nervous? Well, obviously the word is nervous. It is the amount of instruction that I'm going to spend on that, well, I'm going to expand it. I'm going to be explicit. I'm going to put it through the routine. Nervous is an excellent choice for expanded instruction. The word is critical to the selection and is useful in the future. Students can use the term to label their feelings and can use the word in their written stories. Okay? So looking at relieved, again, it's expanded instruction. It's explicit instruction. I'm going to put it through the 6-step routine. Why? What is my rationale? Well, relieved is an excellent choice for elaborated instruction, as the word may be unknown, and it's critical to passage understanding, and it will be useful to second graders. For instance, when a test is canceled, students can respond, "Ah, I'm so relieved." It will be especially effective to teach relieved after nervous, thus showing the change in the feelings when something difficult is over. Okay? Let's move on to step 3. Grab your bookmark. Read it with me. Underline additional words other than the Tier 2 words you selected in step 2A above, necessary for your students to understand the text. Decide how you will teach these words. Example, pairing, parallel language, showing a picture. Add these notes to the text. Okay? So in this case, probably what I would do, I would go back to the text. And let's say the word trampoline, because that was one that we didn't really identify as a Tier 2 word, but it's a word that many second graders may not know. Again, that's subjective. My son was jumping on a trampoline when he was in pre-K. But I'd go right back to the text. That would be my first stop. And what a perspective here. It's like an aerial shot of one of the boys up high, about to hit the camera, we are to assume. And then the other boy is down on the trampoline. And this leads to a great discussion. All right there inside your book. Okay? Now, we are ready to move on to the you do. Are you ready? Now, here's how we're going to do this. On your table, there are no two alike. They're just all different books in a stack. There should be between 3 and 5 books at each of your tables, okay? So what I'm going to ask you to do is to work with a partner and select one text and complete all 3 steps. Step 1, Step 2, Step 2A is still considered part of Step 2, and Step 3. I'll walk you through each one. I'm going to check in with you after each one. So for right now, some of these texts might be a little lengthy. So you have to look at it and judge. Do I want to just read the first 2 pages? Can I get through the whole book? I don't know. You have to look and see what you have. But go ahead and partner with the person sitting next to you. If you have an odd number at your table, it's okay if you have 3 in a group. That's okay. We're not going to fret about that. So, choose your text, read through a little bit of it first, and then go to step 1. Oh, good question. Thank you, Miss Fody. Everybody look at me. Look at me. Ha ha ha. She asked a great question that I didn't even write down in my notes to tell you. But the books that you have here are between grade levels 3 and 5. So you could be a 3rd, 4th, or 5th grade teacher. This training is designed for grades 3, 4. But I did notice when I got the shipment of books at my house that a couple of them had sticky notes that said grade 5. So between 3 and 5. So just do step 1. Just step 1 for now. So all we're doing, highlight words, which we're not going to highlight. We're going to do what? Write on a sticky note, absolutely. Text that might be unfamiliar to your 3rd, 4th, or 5th grade students. I'll leave that up there so you can see it in case yours is not handy. And the language arts specialist will be coming around. I will come around if you have questions. Come back or I will sing. You don't want that to happen. Okay, so could somebody share out, I know all of our texts are completely different, but could somebody just share out a couple of the words that you noticed might be unfamiliar to your 3rd, 4th, or 5th grade students? Just yell them out.
Cabin.
Did I hear hiatus? Yeah. And then you said cabin?
Cabin.
Cabin, hiatus. Fault. Engulfed. What else? There's an echo in here. It's like bouncing off the walls and coming at me. In who? Endorsed. Wow. Perched. Bustling. You said something, I heard it. Snuffed. Wow. Listless. Oh, yeah. Blouse? Okay. Yeah. Yonder. Counter? Encounter. These are good ones. These are good ones. Okay, so next step, we're going to move on to step 2. Remember what step 2 is? You're going to circle words that might be categorized as tier 2. Okay? You have a couple of minutes to work with your partner. See if you agree or disagree. Remember, it can be subjective. Go back to your bookmark. You have the questions on the back. Okay, importance and utility. Is this a word that students will see in a variety of texts? Instructional potential, conceptual understanding. Use your test questions. We will come around and see if you have questions. So did we all have a chance to circle a few words? Share some of the words that you circled. Just yell them out. Dismay. Dismay. Say that again. Fragile. Landscape. Protested. Embarked. Crooked. Barely. Excellent. Okay. Now, step 2A, remember, we're not necessarily going to write anything down here, but we are going to pull out those words that we want to put through the routine, words that need thorough attention, words that we want to teach explicitly. Talk with your partner for just a moment on step 2A. Which words would you put through the routine? See if you agree. Go. Nobody got hurt, nobody cussed, nobody fussed. It's okay if you don't agree. I said that in the beginning, right? Okay, come back to me. We have one more step now. We are going to underline. Look at step 3. Underline additional words other than the tier 2 words you selected in step 2A above, necessary, excuse me, for your students to understand the text. Decide how you will teach these words. Are you going to use pairing, parallel language, show a picture? How are you going to explain that? Remember with enemy pie, I showed a picture of the trampoline directly from the book. Remember with the article, I did a lot of pairing. Sometimes I found the answer right within the context of the article. Work with your partner. Determine those words and how you would address them because they still need attention. Couple of minutes, go. Could you share out some of the ways, well, first share your word, and then tell me how would you address it? Other than putting it through the 6-step vocabulary routine, how would you address that?
Venomous, we said we would pair with poisonous.
Venomous, she would pair with poisonous. That's a great one.
We had cabin, and there was a picture of Ruby Bridges' cabin at the beginning, so.
They had the word cabin. There's a picture right inside the cover of a cabin, and you can have the conversation right there, relate it directly to the text. Yes, ma'am?
With watermelon patch, they probably know watermelon, but not what a watermelon patch is. They're just showing them a picture to say this is where they grow.
Yes, a watermelon patch, she said. I like this one because they might know watermelon and they might know patch, but they might know like patch on your clothes, on your jacket, right? So you would need to show them a picture of what that is. That's right up there with feedlots from my New York Times article. I don't know how to describe that other than I have to show it to you. But you got to have a good picture. Has to be a good one. And it has to have all the attributes of that particular word. And we'll come back to that in a minute. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
We had Jim Crow colored section, and you would have to give an explicit historical background for those words.
So there's a whole other lesson for you to teach, right? Hope you got a lot of time in the day, right? But I like that. I like that. Yes, ma'am.
The book that we're looking at, Come On Rain, is all about the heat and how hot it is. So we were talking about taking some of those, maybe not necessarily the words, but taking some of the phrases like bullies the air and the heat wavers, and doing some of that with writing and creating an anchor chart of these are things that are describing how hot it is, and so helping the kids that to support the writing instruction that way.
That's beautiful. What's our focus? Vocabulary and oral language. And if they're writing it, maybe they'll talk it. Yes, absolutely. That's why we don't just put words through the routine and then move away from them. They still need attention, and that's exactly why. Everything you just said. All right, ladies and gentlemen, guess what? You've made it through Vocabulary Booster Session number 1.